Hello and welcome to West Country Wanderings. Welcome to one in my railway series. Now I hesitate a little bit as I say that because what we're looking at today isn't a railway but a former tramway here in the heart of the City of Gloucester. So I'm here at Gloucester Docks and we're going to be looking at part of the remains of the tramway that went through this city and on to another town called Cheltenham. Now we're going to be looking at the reasons why it needed to be built and also to avoid a little bit of confusion. Why the confusion? Well, when I say the word tramway, I really mean tram road. After this tram road was built and then closed towards the middle part of the 19th century, there were a couple of other trams that came along. One right at the end of the 19th century, which was also horse-drawn, and one which was the electric tramway, which came in the earlier part of the 20th century, closing round about the Second World War. So if you have a look around Gloucester Docks here, you'll see some tracks in place. There's one section here which has got cobbles on it, and if we go down here a little bit, you'll see something else. You'll see some more sections of track here. Now the thing to notice is that these are of different gauges to the one round there. So what's going on here? What's the history of this area here in Gloucester Docks? Well, I hope to unpick a little of it in this short video here on West Country Wanderings today. So what we'll talk about first of all though is why a tram road. It's more hard working on these cobbles here, Gloucester Docks. It's a bit of a dull morning, but hopefully the video will be interesting and make up for the dullness of the light. They needed this for a couple of reasons. Wasn't for passengers, it never carried passengers at all, but it was to do with the success of the spa town of Cheltenham, which lies about 8 miles to the kind of northeast of the City of Gloucester here. That became highly successful Regency town. All the great and the good went there, and they needed to build the town up. And to build, obviously, you need stone. So that was the first thing. And the other thing, of course, a town that's growing, as indeed the town was, or rather the city here being prosperous, it needed a supply of energy. And of course, that energy in those days came from coal. Where did the coal come from? Well, a couple of coal fields in this part of the West Country Wanderings region, named the Forest of Dean and the Wyre Forest. So coming down from the Shropshire, Worcestershire end, down the River Severn and coming up the River Severn from the Forest of Dean. There was also some coal that came up from South Wales, also using the River Severn. And it came to here, to Gloucester Docks, which had opened with the opening of the Gloucester and Sharpness, formerly the Gloucester and Berkeley Canal, which was a ship canal, still is a ship canal, but no ships use it these days. So you've got two elements there. So you've got coal coming in, needed to go over to Cheltenham, and also stone that was required. Well, where did the stone come from? Well, the stone came from quarries outside of Cheltenham at a hill called Leckhampton Hill, which we did cover on our Cotswold Way walking series. Now, what I hope to do as a separate video, I won't have time to do it today because I need to get over there, is to have a look and see if there's any part of the tramway over at Leckhampton Quarries. It was run as a separate section. We'll talk a little bit more about that because it does get a little bit tricky. So we've got our coal coming in here to Gloucester Docks. We've got stone over there at Leckhampton, and we need a way of transporting them to get the stone Leckhampton into the town of Cheltenham and across here to Gloucester as well, and the coal from here across to Cheltenham. Roads are very poor, so they needed another way to transport it. An act was passed in 1809, the Gloucester and Cheltenham Tram Road Act, which set about the work. Now the track width, which is quite important, was 3 foot and 6 inches wide gauge, and so it was a plate way. You had stone blocks with it. In a new modern parlance, that's 1.067 metres if you prefer in metric, which I kind of do because it makes it more easier to transfer these days, but I know some of you prefer the imperial, so yes, it was built as, which it would have been in those days, of course, 3 foot 6 inches wide. So different to both broad gauge and our present day standard gauge. But it came about here. Now, where exactly is a little bit confusing, because it doesn't appear on the old OS maps, because it had closed. The first OS maps are around about 1885, and this tramroad had closed long before that, so there isn't much mention of it on the OS map, so it's hard to work out where. According to Wikipedia, it comes to a place called Nate, N-A-I-G-H-T, Nate Wharf. Well, I have no idea where Nate Wharf is in Gloucester Docks. I can't find it. If you do know, please let me know. There is a place called Nate Wharf at Maesmore, which is the other side of Gloucester on the A48, the road down to Chepstow in Wales. I'm certainly, it wasn't there, it was certainly here at Gloucester Docks, but exactly where, I'm not 100% sure. But what I am sure about, it certainly came across in this direction, passing the Mariners' Chapel, which is just on my left-hand side now. Now, one of the amazing things we do have here is a place called Albion Cottages. We have a replica of the tramroad and the wagons that we use. Now, they're not the original ones, but it's on the line, and they're outside Albion Cottages here. So we're just going to have a look at that now, because that's an important line of our route. The route itself was about 8.5 miles long. Of course, it had that branch to Leckhampton Hill, the Leckhampton quarries there, heading over towards Cheltenham. And we're going to be following part of the route today here in the city of Gloucestershire. Here in the Gloucestershire? No, here in the city of Gloucester, where it went. So these are the trucks here. There they are. They're owned by the Gloucester Docks estate. So these are our actual trucks, and you can actually see a mock-up of how it would have run. So let's have a look at that in a little bit of detail. So there's our wheels there, flange wheels there, and you can see how they were jointed here. Look at that interesting joint there. So only in very short lengths down there. You can see how the trucks would have been linked there. And along here. And around there. That's absolutely brilliant to see that piece of tramroad history here in Gloucester Docks. And there we go. So these trucks would have been horse-drawn hauled, and you can imagine that this would have been filled up with either coal up to here, or limestone there, and the limestone obviously coming out of the quarries Leckhampton there. But that's absolutely brilliant to see that here at Gloucester Docks. Now we have some more interesting things here. I'm just going to pan around so you can see where we are here. There is an interpretive panel which covers it as well. So you have a few interesting photographs here. Now this is a detail from the seal of the Tramroad Company, and it shows coal being carried by the Tramroad Company there. So that's really good, isn't it? So you can see that the coal heaped up there. That's the trucks that I just showed you, obviously horses drawing them. And here is another one with the later Midland Railway. You had two railway companies operating here at Gloucester Docks, both the GWR and the Midland Railway, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. And a fantastic photo here taken by Ben Ashworth showing the cottages, which are just behind me. I'll show you those again in a minute, on its way towards High Orchard Yard there. A fantastic photo. So there's our trucks in front of Albion Cottages. There they are, waiting to be loaded up at the wharf side here at Gloucester Docks. This is a wonderful part of Gloucester Docks here. This is the original gateway of our Gloucester and Cheltenham tramroad, say 1811, which is when it opened. And it was through that gateway that it left Gloucester Docks, heading directly along there, past the Tall Ship Pub, which I think was there. The first building on the right wasn't, that was a block of flats. It would have been there, going along there, carrying the goods and minerals, pulled by the horses, along the 3-foot 6-inch gauge. There's a plaque there which is erected in 1991 by Gloucester Civic Trust and the Gloucestershire Society for Industrial Archaeology. We've even got a hinge there, so presumably there were gates on it at one time. And the original bolt here as well. Obviously we've got the modern gates there, but yeah, literally went straight through there. And I'll show you where it went to after that, because it's interesting. So these are the original tall brick pillars here, and I do think this here is the original wall. So our tram road left the docks here, through the gates here. I think that's one of the original Gloucester dock entrance points here, just to show you that. The first, I'll say, normally you have the first sod of earth cut, but here it was the first stone laid, and that was on the 21st of November 1809, and it didn't completely open until 1811. I think it opened in sections, but the priority was given to the section around Leckhampton going into Cheltenham rather than this section here, because stone was thought to be priority over the coal being transported. So yeah, you've got that there. I won't show it too much because it's now a barber's, but that one is in there. So we're going across here. So this is our route. This is our tram road route that we're on. There's a few more clues on the way. So we're in here coming into Southgate Street here in Gloucester, along this way. And we need to go down through Albion Street, because that's where our tram road once went. I'll see you on the other side of the road. So our tram road would have come through here, through Albion Street, along here. And as we're walking along here, just tell you a little bit about the operation of this line. Now, it was built a single track. There was a double track section back there in Gloucester Docks, but this bit would have been single track all the way to Cheltenham. But there were passing loops. There were 4 passing loops every mile. And you had something known as a D marker. And I don't think I've come across this, and I'm not even sure what the D stands for. Maybe it was just a symbol. But the D marker was like a demarcation mark. Maybe it was demarcation, I'm not sure. Point. So if you had passed the D marker, you didn't need to reverse back. So if you hadn't got to the D marker, you needed to reverse your trucks back to the previous passing loop to allow the next train, if you like, going forward on this tram road to pass, if you see what I mean. So yeah, no signals, nothing like that at all. So yeah, D markers to know which one was closest to the passing loop. And it was always the ones that had empty trucks, they always had to reverse. So they were just carrying empty trucks and they'd already disembarked their load of coal or stone, they would need to reverse. The other ones had priority. So we're following along here. Albion Road splits now into Brunswick Square. It did actually cross over a bit of Brunswick Square, but he actually went this way along a road actually called Old Tram Road. So the clue is in the lane there, in the name. How do I know it's Old Tram Road? Well, as my YouTube buddy says, it's on the tin, literally here on the top of these double garages. There, Old Tram Road. That's brilliant to see that, isn't it? And then it continued along here, so let's follow it. So at this point here, it's going on a curve, curving round. Just imagine what this would have been like with a train coming through here, carrying coal, limestone from the quarry, just through here. With the houses either side seeing that, it would have been quite a bit of noise. Obviously there was no steam engine, but we'll come on to that in a moment, because that's a little bit of an interesting tale in itself. But yeah, right through here into Brunswick Square. At this point we have to make a slight diversion. I think it would have gone the other side of this wall here. So through here, between those two buildings there, but we can't walk that way, so I'm going to backtrack and go around the other side of Brunswick Square. So we're now in beautiful Brunswick Square in Gloucester, and I think our tram road came out there in the corner of the square, making its way to what would have been later on the Midland Railway's Eastgate station, but of course that didn't exist when the tram road was constructed. So I think it would have actually come through those gates that were there being built afterwards, and then running along in this direction down here. At this point here, I'm not sure exactly which route it took. I think that's the old Baptist church there. So I'm still on the corner of Brunswick Square. This here is a road called Montpellier. It may have gone down there. Let's emphasise may, because I'm not 100% certain. Now I think at this point it crossed Gloucester Park, and it may well have gone through these very gates here. Now that wall there, the bricks on everything, it looks very similar to the one we saw when we left Gloucester Docks. So I think it could well have crossed over the park here, heading towards what would have been the site of Eastgate Railway Station, down through this way. So I think the route of our tramway crossed right across the park. Found him probably not there then, making for the corner of the park. Why do I know that? Well, let's go and have a look. I'm standing on now what was an embankment of a railway line, and that railway line was the Midlands Railway's entrance into the City of Gloucester. This closed in 1975, and it formed a loop right here into Gloucester. And it was sited, the station that is, at Eastgate Station, where the present day Asda is, which is a bit further up here. Now, also further up here was some famous level crossing gates called Barton Gates, with a very tall signal box there. Really amazing sights. If I can find an old photograph of that for you, on what I'm currently walking on now, because there was a branch as well, a Midland Railway branch, which spurred off down that way, crossing the edge of the park back down to Gloucester Docks. Of course, all this came after our tram road going in the direction of Cheltenham. Now, how do I know that this was the direction that the tram road took? Well, I'm currently walking towards Go Outdoors. So if you know Gloucester, you'll know exactly where I am now. So Go Outdoors is just up here. And behind me, or rather in front of me, behind me now was once Barton Crossing. So our tram road out of the docks came there, and after the Midland line was built, there was a crossing with a tram road crossing over, and then it did a loop around Eastgate Station, crossing over again at the present day Horton Road level crossing. So what we'll do now is I'm going to head back to Gloucester Docks, and I'll continue the journey that way another time. There isn't a lot to see between Gloucester and Cheltenham, fair to say, of our tram road, because obviously there's lots of new buildings. It headed off in the direction of Barnwood, and I think possibly Long Levens before going to Cheltenham and Leckhampton. There's a couple of other interesting things to tell you about. I'll do that when it's a bit quieter back down at the docks, to do with a steam engine that went on the line, and also a little bit about the man that looked after and indeed owned the quarries there at Leckhampton. See you after this short break. Welcome back. Now, the irony about the Midland Railway line closing was the same reason that our Gloucester and Cheltenham tram road closed. The Midland Railway loop, I'll do a diagram now so you can see exactly why it's called a loop, closed with not so much rationalisation, because having two stations in Gloucester, or after all, the city north of Gloucester, Worcester, still has two railway stations, well, three if you include Worcestershire Parkway outside. So it wasn't for that, it was for another reason. Because of that loop, there were lots of level crossings, so every time a train was coming up on the Midland line, it meant the traffic all jammed up and backed up here in the city of Gloucester. So there was pressure put upon BR to close the Midland loop, rationalise the railway in Gloucester, just have the simple triangle where it meets the South Wales line, and then put everything into Gloucester Central, which is present-day Gloucester railway station, of course. So that closed in 1975. Similarly, our tram road closed because people in Gloucester were and presumably Cheltenham as well, were fed up with trucks rumbling through the streets, having to give way to these heavily laden trucks with coal and limestone and perhaps iron ore as well, trotting through the streets of Gloucester, tying everything up. So it's interesting to tell that. So there's literally a 100-year gap between this tram road closing and the Midland Railway loop here in the city of Gloucester. But yeah, interesting to think that it closed for exactly the same reason. Of course, it's come full circle now because other places, trams are reopening again. Places like Edinburgh, Sheffield and Birmingham have now got trams that have reopened in the past 30 years or so. And in fact, in the West Midlands, there is an extension to the line between Birmingham and Wolverhampton, which is going to go across to serve the town of Dudley. So yeah, interesting to think that the whole lot's gone complete full circle. Now, absolutely nothing to do with railways or tram roads whatsoever. It's just to point this out. Here once lived the Gloucester-born inventor Hubert Cecil Booth, who invented the vacuum cleaner back in 1901. He was a mechanical engineer, designed engines for the Royal Navy battleships, and famously in 1894 he created a fairground great wheel for the exhibition at Earl's Court, and he later designed the famous Riesenrad wheel in Vienna. Yes, the home once of Hubert Cecil Booth. If you've ever seen the film The Third Man with Orson Welles, great film set in wartime Vienna, Riesenrad wheel there, I've forgotten the name of the park in Vienna, but that forms a really important scene in the film. But it still stands there, and I have been on it a few years ago, about 12 years ago. I went to Vienna on holiday and went on that. But amazing to think that he designed that and it was built there in Vienna. Man from Gloucester here. Anyway, nothing to do with our tram roads. We're walking back along Montpellier now, edging the park still, retracing our route back to Gloucester Docks, where we will conclude our little video looking at the Gloucester and Cheltenham tram road, part one, because I certainly want to go over to Leckhampton and tell you a little bit more about that before we close the video, but we'll do that as a separate one here on West Country Wanderings. I now need to talk to you about a gentleman called Charles Brandon Try. Very interesting man. I could probably devote an entire video just to him. Man of these parts from Gloucestershire. Now, he owned and opened the Leckhampton quarries, but originally he was an apothecary. He was actually trained in the city of Worcester, worked in a pharmacy there, later became a surgeon, would you believe, and also had interest in quarrying. And it was his tramway, which had inclined planes going up to a gradient of 1 in 37, I believe, that went from this tram road from here in Gloucester to the base of Leckhampton Hill. So this took you from here to Cheltenham onto Leckhampton Hill with spurring off, and then it was his own tramway, Mr. Try's, that went on to the quarries itself. And as I say, that's what we're going to be looking at next time on the Gloucester and Cheltenham tram road here on West Country Wanderings. Now, the other thing to tell you about is that I think it was around 1936, no it wasn't, it was around 1836 to 1837, they did actually try a steam engine on the tram road with disastrous results because they weren't using steel or even wrought iron. The inevitable happened. The rails actually shattered into different pieces. And yeah, that was something they weren't going to try again. So they stuck with horses throughout this tram road's life. Now, of course, there was a later tram road which was for passengers. That came towards the end of the 19th century. And that's a whole different story unto itself. There's a blue plaque here. And up here, there's a bell, which is just up there. See that bell there? That is the Atlas bell. I'll move away from the noisier ACU unit here. And it was the bell of the ship the Atlas, launched in 1812, made several trips to India and China. And after the ship was broken up in 1832, the bell was used here to signal the dockers' starting and finishing times for their shifts. 1941 it was moved to Shepherdine on the banks of the River Severn as a navigational aid in fog, put back here in 1986. So that would have been ringing when our tram road here at Gloucester Docks was in operation. Amazing. Yeah, as I said at the start, there's lots of railways here that lined up. The GWR bought the rights to the tram road after it closed around about 1859. I can't be exactly precise because a couple of sources are giving me different dates, but round about then. So they bought the rights of it. I think perhaps they converted it to broad gauge initially, and they had their own connections to here, to Gloucester Docks, including one from over on the other side of the River Severn there, connected up to their later South Wales line running down to Chepstow. On the Midland, well, they had their own loop. You saw that loop that we were walking across on the embankment there, heading towards Barton Street, and they had their loop crossing over the edge of Park to here as well, and they were using part of the route of the tram road back over there by Albion Cottages. So although the tram road had declined and stopped altogether, of course, it was replaced by a network of railway lines in the dock area, huge network, which was very, very busy connecting up with the ships and all the goods that came here into Gloucester Docks. Of course, that may not have happened had not the tram road to Cheltenham and the quarries had been built in the first place. So that's it for today here on West Country Wanderings in the City of Gloucester, at Gloucester Docks, as you probably hear from the seagulls there flowing around the docks area. Yeah, it's an interesting tale, the Gloucester and Cheltenham tram road. Largely forgotten, I think. I did a bit of a recce the other day and I saw that old tram road sign there, and that kind of inspired me, obviously in conjunction with the trucks there to make it. But another time we will wander up to Leckhampton Hill to see if there are any remains of the tram road up there and the quarries that were once on the hillside there, bringing the stone down into the town of Cheltenham Spa. Thank you very much for watching today. Take care of yourselves, look after yourselves, and I hope to see you on the channel again very, very soon. All the best for now. Bye-bye.